Now they may not love the industry, or they may not love, other.
I have lots of thoughts. I think starting off with it's not a straight is becoming more and more popular. Has always been different across those, right? There's never a day where I'm not putting out a teeny fire or a huge fire, and then eventually one of them will sneak up on you, and that's where the big fires crop up. And you're like, boom, here's a spreadsheet, here's all the right formulas, and it's like, okay, so what? Like, just always questioning yourself. So what?
All right, welcome back, listeners, to another fun-fledged episode of Method and Madness of Product with me, Manny. So it's been a while, but we got some great topics, and actually want to introduce Steph, who's going to be accompanying me on the next few episodes to discuss a plethora of product management topics that really dives into the meat and potatoes of a number of different things that we've been talking about that has led up to this point. So with that being said, I want to introduce Steph, who has been a product manager for over 15 years and has experience primarily in the healthcare industry, but has worked across the hospital in the consulting space, startup space, and most recently, she is the head of product for Seed Stage company. While in this role, she is building an exciting new virtual care solution for patients who have experienced a stroke. So welcome, Steph. Thank you for joining me and for the upcoming episodes as well, but really appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
Anything
thanks
that
for
I missed
inviting me.
there?
No, I think you got it all. I'm super excited to be here. It feels like the good old days, so excited to jam out.
Awesome. Awesome. So today's topic, we're going to talk about product manager roles and responsibilities. Just basically to show a glimpse of a product manager and kind of like we want to put ourselves in the mind frame of like if you were pitching this stuff to, someone that you interviewed, what would it be if they're the first time coming into the space? Maybe they're green to the role, maybe they're transferring, doing a career change, and they're coming into this role. So I'll just talk a little bit about, from my perspective, what I've kind of observed doing the role, and then we'll turn it over to you just to pick your brain from your experience. So product management is a key role in any businesses that focuses on digital development or digital product solutions. The product manager is responsible for assuring that the product meets customer needs, whether it's internal or external, and it aligns to the business objectives. Again, there goes that little sneaky word, aligned, which if you haven't listened to season 1, this is a plug to go back because the first episode was all about alignment. So achieving this goal requires a wide range of daily and long-term responsibilities that involve strategic thinking, communication, and collaboration with different teams within the organization. So in this episode, we're just going to explore the critical day-to-day and some of the long-term responsibilities that a product manager will kind of endure. I say endure intentionally, and how they contribute to a product success, which rolls up to organization success. So Steph, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. I think starting off with it's not a straightforward answer. Like product management is an awesome space to be in. I think you can do a lot of good. You can have a lot of fun. You have an opportunity to make a huge amount of impact in a very measurable way, which is part of being a product manager. But honestly, I've worked in with lots of different companies and lots of different types of organizations, and the role product manager has always been different across those, right? Like, so it's very dependent upon the organization. It's dependent upon the size, the industry, all of that. I think generally, if I do have to generalize, there are some product managers who are asked to be entirely strategic. Think vision, think forward, and don't do the day to day. And then there are other product managers. Often they're called product owners, but again, every company
Mhm.
calls them differently, but that's going to be like in the backlog with the team day to day. Don't think forward, think about what's in front of your nose. And then there are other companies, and this is kind of where more modern companies are often going. It's the lean methodology. It's making sure that we're working smarter, not harder, where you kind of do both. And from my personal experience, that's the fun part, right? You get to like zoom in and be an expert and be with the team and get your hands dirty, and then you get to like pick your heads up and think about the future and dream and be creative. And it allows you to be a really well-rounded individual. But I'll stop there.
Agreed.
Just sort of initial thoughts.
No, I love the excitement, love the energy, and you're right. I've been doing it for a little over 10 years, and I kind of just fell into it and I absolutely love it. So, I love talking, and almost every peer that I've ever come in contact with that does this work loves it. Now they may not love the industry, or they may not love, other
Yeah.
things about it, but the job itself is really a rewarding one. Especially once you take the time and you come up with your own system that works for you as a product manager, and that really folds in well with whatever team that you're working on. And it really is about finding the right fit.
Yeah. Can I also
And,
just say, like, I love what you just said about I fell into it. I think this might be changing because product management is becoming more and more popular, and companies are realizing the value and all of that. And so with that comes training programs, and like you can go to school for this stuff now. But almost everyone I know says I fell into it. Like, I didn't know this was a role. I got put in this position and I realized I really like talking to people and solving problems. And, it's sort of, it stuck. And I love that it's become this like accidental career for so many people, myself included. And now it's like becoming or has become, I should say, a more formalized career path.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So let me ask you this, Steph. So you come in, you wake up, you get your coffee or tea. Some people are coffee drinkers, some people are tea drinkers. And so you get into the office, and what is kind of like your mindset, like on a typical day? Like, what is kind of like your day to day kind of responsibilities? And it could be high level and generic from across the different roles that you've had, but what are some of the commonalities that you've kind of observed over your years of working?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm a coffee girl, so I drink my coffee, get my energy up, say like, let's go. And then my day is, the common thread is it's about prioritization. There's no 2 days that are the exact same. There's never a day where I'm not putting out a teeny fire or a huge fire, and there's never a day where I'm not, doing big work. And for me, I love that blend, but it always starts with like, okay, what do I need to work on? What is maybe urgent and has to get done? What is important but not so urgent? And how do I carve out time very intentionally to be able to handle both of those? Because if you don't, eventually one of them will sneak up on you, and that's where the big fires crop up. So I think it's about being very intentional with your time management, with your prioritization. A lot of my day now it's a little different, right? Because with the seed stage
Mhm.
company, I'm building a product from scratch. So I don't have the same workflows. I'm more like getting my hands dirty and that sort of thing, which has been a cool refresher. But usually when I was in a more established company, it's like start with the metrics, start with, what's immediately in my face. And I think the metrics are always a nice place just to like get in the habit of checking that sort of stuff, looking at your calendar, looking at big milestones that are coming up and planning accordingly.
Absolutely. It's almost like constant refinement. So like I know for
Yeah.
those that are familiar with the agile methodology, you're gonna get your backlog, and you're refining stories, and you're helping your team be prioritized. Hence the reason for, daily stand up, just to stay aligned with the team. But you also have to, I do something very similar. I also like to be aligned every morning. So I like to get in early enough where like I'm not jumping right into a fire. I want to, what does my day hold? What can be pivoted if a fire does come up, and I can say, okay, I'm free at this spot. Let's get the developers, or let me get on the phone with the end user. Let's find out what's happening here. So I think it's that constant reprioritization on a micro level, even before you can get to the macro. I think that's a great thing that you pointed out as far as like a day to day kind of like responsibility. So when you talk about the strategic side, talk to us a little bit more about what types of responsibilities lie in that strategic thinking space.
Yeah, so a lot of it is about, with nowadays I'm in the vision and mission space because it doesn't exist. So setting like, what do we want to be when we grow up, and what are we trying to do, and how are we trying to impact the lives of patients who have had a stroke? How do we try and impact their ecosystem and create a mission around that? That then is sort of like, okay, we're here today, we've got a place to go. Now let's strategize of the how we get there. There's a lot of like understanding, what's the current state journey and what are all the pain points? Where does it break? Where can we just make patients' lives better? Talk to patients, talk to clinicians, talk to the caregivers, talk to the whole ecosystem, where it's possible, collect quantitative, have actual numbers and data. And, there's so many different organizations that put out public data. So you can kind of combine this, like, okay, we've got quant, I've got qual. And then, that to me has always helped prioritize a lot. I think it's also, we should have like a count here for how many times we say align, but it's a lot also about alignment, right? Because even if you have the best intentions to solve your customers or your users' problems and you've come up with a perfect solution, which by the way doesn't exist, but if you hit on that, it doesn't work unless you have alignment across your organization, sometimes with your
Yes.
customers themselves. Like, I know there's nothing that's going to slow stuff down or bring things to a screeching halt at the 11th hour than a surprise to some stakeholder who should have been in the know. And so, I think that can get very tactical. There's never a day where I don't talk to a stakeholder or a team member, but I think it's also something that you have to be intentional and strategic of, like, how do I make sure that these people stay in the know, that I control the decision making as much as possible, that they feel heard and aligned with, and all of that good stuff. But it's a bit of an art in terms of that as well. Very strategic at times.
Absolutely. It's definitely like going to an orchestra. We definitely need conductors. So I think, I had these kind of 5 buckets. I think you touched on almost all of them. So just so the listeners can hear, and just jump in if I'm missing anything. I think the 5 key daily responsibilities, though, like the first big bucket is meeting with the development team and staying on the same page with your development team as a product manager, right? And then the second one is communicating with stakeholders, like you just touched on that, like making sure all the stakeholders are up to speed. If any pivots or anything in the data or the metrics or saying something different, that communication has to be communicated. And then the third thing would be analyzing data, right? You touched on that with, and I think when we talk about data, a lot of people mix them together, but I think it's important that, folks understand that data comes in like these 3 big buckets, and that can be a whole podcast for another time. But I think about those in these 3 buckets. You have like your team health or your team performance data. Then you have your product data. Like, what is the product data telling you to help you make decisions, right? And then the third bucket of kind of data is the whole like financial piece, the value, like is the effort you're putting out netting back the value that you anticipated, right? So those kind of 3 things would kind of encompass the analyzed data, which is kind of like all encompassing. So I wanted to kind of distinguish those. And then creating product documentation. And I would probably say This right here is always the one in the whole agile methodology, from what I observe, that always seems to get deprioritized. And it drives me crazy, especially when a product manager moves on to another challenge and then someone comes in to try to pick up where they were at. And we could talk more about that. And then conducting market research. I don't know that when I first came into the role, if I've ever was told about like the market research component of it as being like a core foundational responsibility. But I learned very quickly. So those were the 5 things that I think I've heard that you kind of touched on a little bit, and that I just wanted to kind of put into like a summary. Any one of those you want to go a little bit deeper, or you have any comment on?
I guess the only 2 comments I would say, maybe 3 comments. I think there's an overarching theme over all of those of prioritization, right? Like you do a little bit of everything, and you got to figure out, when it comes to metrics, when it comes to communication, when it comes to the team, all of that, like, that's sort of the overarching theme of product managers. It's all about getting the most amount of value as soon as possible. And, that's not possible without doing all the things you just said. So that's one thing I would say. I think in terms of market research, what I have seen in my experience is that there's this like misinterpretation of why you do market research. I think for me, I would almost label it as more about understanding the problem, and market research is a way to do that. Talking to customers is a way to do that. Looking at data is a way to do that. But it's pretty easy to get lost in market research and just do this never-ending exercise. And then you've spent a week and you're like, I don't know what I was doing, but now I know everything there is to possibly know about tractors. It can be a bit of a black hole. So that was one thing. And then I would just say with metrics, like, I love the way you bucketed that out. I think it's as much about analyzing the different kinds of data as it is about being strategic and thinking. When I have people in the past, I teach metrics as if they are a journey where you have to think about like, where are we now with this metric? Where are we going? Right? That's the target. And then you have to craft the plan of how you measure it and how you get there. All too often, you are given a target, or you are thrown a metric, or sometimes you set your own metric, but you don't know, that does no good unless you know where you've come from, and it does no good if you can't actually measure it. So I think that's an important piece of it. And probably the most important piece of all of it is the ability to analyze and then pull out insights. I've also seen a lot of people who are very quant heavy and comfortable with it sort of do all this analysis and be like, boom, here's a spreadsheet, here's all the right formulas. And it's like, okay, so what? Like, just always questioning yourself, so what, with all of that. And then, metrics should be used to inform your next decision, and your next decision and what you do now, next, and later. And it's a powerful tool, but you've got to work at it and get good at it to be able to really leverage them.
Absolutely. And I love that part that you added to the end on like, what are you going to do with it? Now that you know, what are you going to do with it?
Totally.
And so, that's definitely an important piece. I think this was really good. Really great discussion. Is there anything that you want to add on this topic, or do you feel like we've kind of hammered the nail home?
I think we've gotten pretty comprehensive. I think, to your point in the beginning about, for those who maybe haven't had experience, or maybe a little greener, doing a career switch or whatever, like, if I've ever interviewed anywhere, ask, what is my role here? If it's not clear in the job description, because I don't love to do all of these things. There are certain things I like more, and I want to make sure that the things that I really love are incorporated in my day. And I know I would be happy if I was doing product owner work purely. That's just me, right? And so I want to make sure that I get a good mix. So always ask every interviewer you talk to, what does my role look like? What's success look like? What's expected? And I think that gives you a good idea of what the role at that company specifically looks like.
Exactly, because they do vary. They vary.
We've seen it, right?
By a lot. All righty. So, well, I think we're in a good place to wrap up this topic. And so I just want to say, in closing, that the role of a product manager is multifaceted. involving daily and long-term responsibilities that require a combination of strategic thinking, communication, and collaboration that we've kind of hit on. I think the biggest thing is that you will be working with a number of teams throughout the organization to help achieve these goals. So it's not just your one team. That team will have a great impact with a number of teams within the organization. So I did want to call that out. Understanding these responsibilities and their impact on product success is essential for aspiring product managers and for anyone interested in product development process. So with careful planning and execution, product managers can help their companies achieve their goals and deliver products that meet customer needs. So that's us. That's episode 1 of season 3. Thank you guys for listening.
Hope you enjoyed and learned as much as we did from this episode. If you haven't yet, follow us on all of our social media platforms for more awesome and insightful product leadership, discussions, and content. Check out the description for the links. Don't hesitate to message us with any comments, recommendations, or questions. Looking forward to our next discussion. Until next time.